a hotel in the heart of Los Angeles. Guests complain about low water pressure, about a strange taste and smell emanating from the taps. A foul metallic tang coupled with a murky, dark discoloration. They report it again and again to the front desk. For nearly 3 weeks, their grievances are dismissed, attributed to aging plumbing or maintenance issues. But the complaints escalate, becoming too insistent to ignore. Finally, on February 19, 2013, a hotel maintenance worker, tasked with investigating the persistent issues, makes his way to the rooftop. The air is thick with the city's hum, but here, isolated above it all, a different silence reigns. He climbs the access ladder to one of the massive water tanks, the kind that supply the entire building. The lid, usually heavy and secured, is ajar. With a sense of unease, he peers inside the cavernous metal cylinder, the surface of the water still and dark. And then he sees it. Floating face up amidst the murky liquid is the naked body of a young woman. Bloated, discolored, utterly lifeless. This is not just a plumbing problem, this is a horror. This is the macabre end to a journey that began with hope and ended in the most grotesque of ways. How did she get there? Who was she? And what unspeakable events led to her becoming part of the Cecil Hotel's dark, tainted water supply? But to understand how we got here, we need to go back. To a time before the complaints, before the body in the tank, before the hotel became a byword for urban decay and despair. It was 1924, an era of burgeoning optimism and economic prosperity, when the Cecil Hotel first opened its grand doors at 640 South Main Street in downtown Los Angeles. It was a beacon of sophistication, a 15-story Beaux Arts masterpiece designed to cater to the city's thriving business class and affluent tourists. Boasting 700 rooms, a lavish marble lobby, stained glass windows, and soaring ceilings, it was intended as a destination, not just a stopover. The hotel's proprietors, William Banks Hanner, Charles Dix, and Robert Schwann, envisioned it as a crown jewel in a city, rapidly expanding its influence as a hub for industry and entertainment. For a brief period, the Cecil truly lived up to its promise. Families on vacation posed for photographs in its elegant foyer, businessmen sealed deals over crisp white tablecloths in its dining room, and travelers found a luxurious respite from the bustle of the Roaring Twenties. It was a place of new beginnings, of dreams unfolding beneath the Californian sun, a symbol of a city reaching for the sky. The meticulously kept guest registries from those early years tell a story of normalcy, of a vibrant hotel catering to a hopeful populace, utterly devoid of the shadows that would later consume its reputation. Yet even in its golden age, the seeds of its future were being sown, subtly, almost imperceptibly, in the shifting landscape of the city that surrounded it. The world around the Cecil began to change dramatically, pulling the hotel down with it. The Great Depression hit Los Angeles hard, transforming the once vibrant downtown core. The grand aspirations of the 1920s gave way to the stark realities of the 1930s. The area directly east of the hotel, known as Skid Row, began to swell with transient populations, the unemployed and the desperate. As businesses moved westward, taking their affluent clientele with them, the Cecil found itself increasingly isolated in a neighborhood teetering on the brink of social collapse. By the 1940s and 50s, the hotel, unable to attract its former clientele, drastically lowered its rates. It became a haven for the down on their luck, the marginalized, and eventually, the truly dangerous. The gleaming marble lobby became a stark backdrop for drug deals and street prostitution. The once luxurious rooms, now cheap and often squalid, attracted a different kind of long-term resident: drifters, ex-cons, and those simply seeking anonymity in the urban sprawl. This transformation was not sudden. It was a gradual, insidious decay mirroring the plight of the city's forgotten inhabitants. The once proud architecture now stood as a silent, decaying monument to lost grandeur, a stark contrast to the human misery unfolding within its walls and on the streets outside. The Cecil was no longer a destination. It was a refuge for those with nowhere else to go, a grim testament to the economic shifts and social inequities that began to define downtown Los Angeles. Its very location, a block from the infamous Main Street corridor, an area notorious for its high crime rate and transient population, sealed its fate. The stage was set not for elegance but for horror. The first cracks in the facade of normalcy appeared early, often dismissed as isolated tragedies in a bustling city. The official records note the first major incident on February 11, 1927, a mere 3 years after its grand opening. A man named W. Kyle Norton, a guest at the hotel, tragically ended his life in his room. While such an event might be seen as an unfortunate, singular incident in any large hotel, at the Cecil, it began a chilling pattern that would stretch for decades. The very next decade, 1930, saw the first recorded suicide by a guest jumping from one of the hotel's upper floors. Pauline Otten, 25, plunged to her death, her body discovered impaled on a flagpole below. This wasn't merely a death, it was a spectacle, an announcement of the darkness gathering within the hotel's walls. These were not the isolated, quiet demises typically associated with a respectable establishment. These were public, often gruesome events that began to draw a morbid fascination. Each incident, though seemingly unrelated, added another layer to the hotel's growing reputation. They were small, almost imperceptible shifts in the hotel's fabric, easy to ignore amidst the daily churn of city life, but in hindsight, they were the grim precursors. No one then could have predicted that these early tragedies were merely the opening notes of a macabre symphony, a prelude to a far more sinister and pervasive darkness that would soon envelop the entire building. The stage was being set for a grim legacy, one suicide at a time. The hotel's descent into a magnet for the macabre escalated dramatically, transcending individual tragedies to become a hunting ground. By the mid-20th century, the Cecil's cheap rates and anonymity made it a preferred haven for serial killers seeking refuge in plain sight. The detail that sends shivers down the spine is the residency of Richard Ramirez, the infamous Night Stalker, in 1985. Ramirez, a satanic serial killer who terrorized California, committing 13 murders, rapes, and countless assaults, paid a mere $14 a night for his room on the 14th floor. He would return to the Cecil, often covered in blood, discarded clothing in dumpsters, and slip back into his room undetected, unnoticed by staff or other residents. The sight of him, often in his signature dark clothing, carrying stolen goods, should have raised alarms, but in the chaos and anonymity of the Cecil, it simply didn't. The hotel effectively became his operational base, a place where he could wash off the night's horrors and plan his next atrocities, while a mere elevator ride away, unsuspecting guests slept. The fact that a mass murderer could freely enter and exit, carrying evidence of his crimes, without suspicion, speaks volumes about the level of disarray and indifference that had taken root within the Cecil. The hotel was no longer just a place where unfortunate things happened. It was actively facilitating heinous acts through its very environment, a dark accomplice to the horrors within and without. And this was just one chapter in its unholy patronage. The Cecil's macabre magnetism continued, drawing yet another infamous predator into its shadowy embrace, solidifying its reputation as a haven for darkness. In 1991, Austrian serial killer Jack Unterweger, a journalist reporting on prostitution in Los Angeles, also chose the Cecil as his temporary residence. He was a charming, outwardly respectable figure, a stark contrast to the rough-hewn facade of Ramirez. Yet beneath this veneer, Unterweger was a convicted murderer, responsible for the deaths of at least 3 prostitutes in Los Angeles and several more in Europe. He moved through the hotel's common areas, interviewed sex workers on the very streets surrounding the Cecil, and committed his heinous acts, all while presenting himself as a legitimate reporter. The fact that 2 separate serial killers, operating in different decades, both found the Cecil to be an ideal, anonymous base for their brutal crimes introduced a chilling new dimension to the hotel's history. It wasn't merely a place where suicides occurred or where down-and-out individuals perished. It was a sanctuary for those who preyed on others. This pattern suggested something deeper than mere coincidence. It implied that the very atmosphere of the Cecil, its permissive nature, its location on the edge of Skid Row, and its transient population, created an environment where the most monstrous of acts could be carried out with impunity. The hotel, it seemed, was not just a silent witness, but an unwitting enabler. Something about its fabric didn't merely attract tragedy, it fostered it. And then the new millennium brought a case that would redefine the hotel's infamy, making all prior horrors seem like mere preamble to a far more baffling mystery. Everything pointed to the Cecil Hotel as a place where the desperate and the dangerous met their grim ends, or worse, found a temporary haven. Its reputation was cemented as a dark eddy in the urban current, a place to be avoided by those seeking peace or safety. But then, on January 26, 2013, a seemingly ordinary young woman arrived, shattering the established narrative of the hotel as merely a backdrop for the criminal underworld. Elisa Lam, a 21-year-old student from Vancouver, British Columbia, checked into the Cecil, intending it as a stop on her solo trip across the American West Coast. She was not a serial killer, nor a transient, nor a desperate soul seeking oblivion. She was a bright, curious traveler, documenting her journey on her Tumblr blog, full of hopes and plans. Her initial intention was to stay in a shared room on the hotel's 5th floor, popular with backpackers and budget travelers. This detail is crucial. It suggests she was seeking a communal, safe environment, utterly unaware of the hotel's chilling past. Her arrival marked a profound departure from the Cecil's typical tragic occupants. She represented youth, vibrancy, and a normal life temporarily intersecting with an abnormal place. Her case wasn't another predictable statistic in the hotel's long list of unfortunate events. It was a baffling contradiction. How could such a seemingly normal individual on an innocent adventure become entangled in the kind of macabre mystery usually reserved for the most hardened of hotel guests? The collision of her innocent journey with the Cecil's dark reality would create a puzzle that continues to defy easy explanation. The pivot, the sudden shift from the expected narrative of the Cecil's patrons to Elisa Lam's presence, revealed layers of her life often overlooked in the sensationalism. Beyond her identity as a young traveler, Elisa was living with bipolar disorder, a fact that would become central to the official explanation of her death, yet often misunderstood in its implications. She was on medication for her condition, and her family stated she had a history of depression and psychosis, but was generally stable when taking her prescribed drugs. Her Tumblr blog, Nouvelle Nouveau, offered a poignant glimpse into her inner world. It was a space for self-expression, filled with poetry, personal reflections, and photographs, often revealing struggles with her mental health alongside typical youthful anxieties. What many don't talk about is the specific nature of bipolar episodes, particularly manic phases, which can manifest as irrationality, paranoia, reckless behavior, and even hallucinations. These symptoms can be profoundly disorienting, capable of causing an individual to act in ways entirely out of character and without concern for personal safety. Initially, after she failed to check out on January 31, her family reported her missing to the Los Angeles Police Department. This was not merely a young woman disappearing. This was a vulnerable individual, far from home, whose mental state could have made her particularly susceptible to disorientation or danger. The initial search focused on the conventional, assuming she had wandered off or met with foul play. No one immediately considered the bizarre, almost impossible scenario that would eventually unfold, demonstrating a tragic failure to connect the dots between her condition and the peculiar environment of the Cecil. Her journey was about to become less a travelogue and more a psychological odyssey into the unknown. The human cost of Elisa Lam's disappearance was immediate and devastating, far removed from the cold statistics of the Cecil's past. Her parents, David and Yin Lam, were plunged into an agonizing ordeal of uncertainty and fear. When Elisa failed to make contact with them on January 31, 2013, the day she was scheduled to check out of the Cecil and continue her journey to Santa Cruz, their immediate concern turned to panic. This wasn't like her. She regularly communicated with them, especially given her medical condition. They reported her missing to the Los Angeles Police Department, initiating a desperate search that traversed thousands of miles from their home in Burnaby, British Columbia, to the grimy streets of downtown LA. They traveled to the Cecil, walking the same halls their daughter had, searching for any clue, any sign. Their faces, captured in later media interviews, bore the profound grief and exhaustion of parents grappling with the unimaginable. They spoke of Elisa as a loving daughter, a bright student, painting a picture of a life vibrant and full of potential, now abruptly truncated by an unknown fate. The family's anguished pleas for information, broadcast by local news outlets, highlighted the stark reality of their situation. A young woman, thousands of miles from home, alone and vulnerable. The hotel, with its sordid past, became a terrifying labyrinth for them, each corridor a potential dead end, each silence amplifying their dread. Their experience underscores the personal devastation behind every cold case, every unsolved mystery that captures public imagination. For the Lams, it was not a puzzle to be solved, but a beloved child lost, an emptiness that would never truly be filled. They clung to the hope that she was simply disoriented, unaware of the grim reality awaiting them. The initial investigation into Elisa Lam's disappearance was plagued by questions, creating a palpable sense that crucial information was either overlooked or actively concealed. One specific detail that fueled public suspicion was the peculiar condition of the hotel's security footage, particularly the infamous elevator video released by the Lapt on February 13. The footage showing Elisa acting erratically, waving her arms, pressing multiple buttons, and peering out into the hallway appeared to be missing significant portions. Independent analysts and online sleuths quickly pointed out apparent jump cuts and altered timestamps, suggesting that the footage had been edited or truncated before public release. While the Lapt maintained the video was unedited except for blurring out a hand to protect privacy, the inconsistencies persisted, making it difficult to ascertain a complete timeline of Elisa's actions. Furthermore, internal maintenance logs for the hotel's rooftop access, which should have meticulously documented any activity or repairs near the water tanks, were notably incomplete or simply not produced for public scrutiny. This lack of transparency regarding building access, combined with the hotel management's general reticence during the initial search, exacerbated the public's perception of a possible cover-up. There was no specific witness officially silenced, but the cumulative effect of selective information release and missing documentation created an environment ripe for speculation. Who benefited from the silence? Perhaps the hotel itself, desperate to avoid further damage to its already tarnished reputation. The absence of clear, unbroken evidence from inside the hotel created a void, allowing theories to proliferate and the mystery to deepen, leaving critical questions unanswered about the true circumstances leading to Elisa's final moments. When Elisa Lam's body was finally discovered, the investigation, led by Lapt Detective Wallace Tennell, shifted from a missing person case to a death investigation. The primary focus immediately turned to how she ended up in the water tank. Investigators meticulously examined the rooftop, seeking any signs of forced entry, struggle, or external intervention. They noted that accessing the rooftop required passing through a locked door and then climbing a ladder to reach the tanks, which themselves had heavy, reportedly sealed lids. However, it was also discovered that a fire escape on the side of the building could provide an alternative route to the roof, and hotel staff admitted that the roof door alarm was often out of order. This detail alone significantly complicated the narrative of impenetrable access. Autopsy results by the Los Angeles County Department of Medical Examiner coroner revealed no physical trauma, no signs of sexual assault, and no illicit drugs in her system, only her prescribed medication. The most crucial piece of evidence, or lack thereof, was the absence of water in her lungs consistent with drowning. Instead, the autopsy noted a significant amount of decomposition and bloating. The water in the tank was subsequently tested and confirmed to be contaminated with bacteria, but nothing that would immediately explain her death. Detective Tennell's team painstakingly reviewed every hour of surveillance footage, not just the elevator video, but all available cameras, looking for anyone else interacting with Elisa or accessing the roof. They interviewed hotel staff and guests, but no one reported seeing her on the roof or encountering anyone suspicious. Despite the rigor, each piece of evidence, instead of clarifying, seemed to deepen the perplexing circumstances, leaving more questions than answers about the impossible location of her remains. The official explanation from the Los Angeles County Department of Medical Examiner coroner, after a comprehensive but ultimately inconclusive investigation, was accidental drowning with bipolar disorder listed as a significant contributing factor. This ruling posits that Elisa, in the throes of a psychotic or manic episode, somehow managed to access the rooftop, climb into the water tank, and then drowned. This explanation, while attempting to provide closure, fails to fully account for several critical contradicting facts, leaving many unconvinced. Firstly, the heavy lids of the water tanks, described by hotel staff and investigators as difficult to open from the outside, let alone from within, present a significant physical challenge. It is claimed that even a small, fit person would struggle to maneuver them, and certainly a disoriented individual in a state of psychosis would find it highly improbable to replace a lid that effectively seals them inside. Secondly, the lack of any significant trauma or struggle marks on Elisa's body, which one would expect from a frantic attempt to escape a confined space, further undermines the simplicity of an accidental drowning scenario. If she had climbed involuntarily and then been unable to get out, some evidence of a desperate fight for survival would likely have been present. Thirdly, the very act of a person experiencing a psychotic episode choosing a water tank as a refuge or a place to hide, then somehow entering it and closing the lid, strains credulity for many. The official explanation, while acknowledging her mental state, doesn't adequately bridge the gap between her condition and the complex, nearly impossible physical logistics of her final resting place. It provides an answer, but one that feels profoundly incomplete, failing to fully satisfy the public's thirst for a coherent narrative. The most credible theory, one that attempts to reconcile the seemingly impossible circumstances with the known facts, leans heavily into the severe impact of Elisa Lam's untreated or poorly managed bipolar disorder. This theory is supported by forensic pathologists and mental health experts, notably Dr. Judy Melinek, who posits a scenario of paradoxical undressing coupled with a manic episode. Paradoxical undressing is a phenomenon observed in cases of hypothermia, where individuals experiencing confusion and a false sensation of warmth begin to remove their clothes. While Elisa's death wasn't attributed to hypothermia, the core concept of extreme disorientation leading to irrational disrobing is applicable. The theory suggests that during a profound psychotic break, Elisa experienced delusions or hallucinations that compelled her to seek safety or escape in an unusual location, the water tank. The fire escape route to the roof, and the fact that the tank lids, while heavy, were not entirely unassailable, especially if she found one already ajar or managed to manipulate it in a state of heightened manic strength, becomes critical. Her nakedness in the tank could be explained by this paradoxical undressing, or by a delusional compulsion to cleanse herself. The water, a symbol of purification, might have drawn her in. This explanation, while deeply tragic, avoids the need for a third-party killer or a hotel conspiracy. It paints a picture of a young woman battling her own mind, succumbing to a fatal combination of severe mental illness and a tragically accessible, yet deceptively dangerous, environment. The evidence of her erratic behavior in the elevator, her history of mental health struggles, and the absence of external trauma all align with this heartbreaking, yet plausible, interpretation of events. It is a narrative of profound personal tragedy, not external malice. The single most disturbing fact in the entire saga of Elisa Lam in the Cecil Hotel is not the bizarre elevator video, nor the theories of foul play, nor the hotel's long, grim history. It is the grim, undeniable reality that for 19 days, from the time Elisa Lam went missing on January 31st until her body was discovered on February 19th, guests of the Cecil Hotel were unknowingly bathing in, brushing their teeth with, and even drinking water tainted by her decomposing remains. The taste, the smell, the discoloration reported by guests for weeks were not due to old pipes or routine maintenance. They were the direct consequence of a human body slowly decaying in the very water supply intended for their consumption and hygiene. Imagine the revulsion, the profound sense of violation, upon learning that the water you used to wash your face to hydrate yourself was the same water that had cradled a corpse for nearly 3 weeks. This detail transcends the realm of a mysterious death and plunges directly into the visceral, making the tragedy deeply, personally repugnant for every single person who stayed at that hotel during that period. It is a horror that lingered not just in the air, but in the very essence of daily life, ingested and absorbed, an invisible, sickening truth that bound the unsuspecting guests to Elisa's final, tragic resting place in the most unspeakable way possible. No other detail underscores the true, profound, macabre nature of this case quite like the knowledge that death, in its most gruesome form, was literally on tap. The story of the Cecil Hotel and the tragic death of Elisa Lam is more than just a grim footnote in Los Angeles history. It's a chilling testament to the unseen horrors lurking beneath the surface of urban life. It reveals how a grand ambition can decay into a haven for desperation, how neglect can create an environment where the most monstrous acts go unnoticed, and how mental illness, when misunderstood or unmanaged, can lead to unspeakable tragedy in the most improbable of places. The Cecil, now rebranded as the Stay on Main, then briefly reopening as the Cecil Hotel once more, continues to stand as a silent, foreboding sentinel in downtown LA, its dark legacy perhaps forever etched into its very foundations. It reminds us that sometimes the true monsters are not ghosts or ghouls, but the stark realities of human suffering, urban decay, and the disorienting labyrinths of the human mind. The mystery of Elisa Lam's final moments, while officially closed, continues to resonate not because of a grand conspiracy, but because it exposes a disturbing vulnerability within our seemingly ordered world, a crack through which unimaginable horrors can seep. It compels us to look closer, to question what lies beneath the surface, and to acknowledge the fragility of life when it intersects with places steeped in shadow. If this kept you up at night, subscribe. We post dark history every week.